Disney Springs and Walt Disney World stirs some controversy this week when it did not allow entry for police officers who were wearing law enforcement logos on their shirts. They were told they'd have to either take them off, turn them inside out, or find their or patronize shops and restaurants elsewhere. We're going to talk about it today on That Park Place. Vash, this is a rough one. Like, I don't know what they and this story is fascinating to me because not only does this happen, but then a thing that never happens as a result. Disney admits it was wrong and apologizes.
Yeah, this was a crazy story right here. We got a lot of twists and turns. But to set this up, apparently there was a get together of some kind of like a conference, right?
It was a national conference. It was
yes. And these officers.
The IPTM Symposium on Traffic Safety was in Orlando.
Right. Okay, yeah. I forgot. I was like, it's not fire, it's not police, it's traffic safety. And a lot of officers actually came off from their shifts, with their full get-ups there in order to meet the other officers there because apparently they were very excited about seeing, officers from all over the nation actually for this event right here. So that's why they were actually going in uniform like they were. But
I don't even know if they were in full uniform. What I saw was polos and conference attire that displayed insignias of law enforcement. Like, I don't think they were were they, I don't know, did you see any photos? Were they like fully uniformed police officers? Because I couldn't find any photos of that.
I heard some varying reports as well. I heard the polos were there, logos were actually present. I'm sure there must have been at least somebody maybe out in full uniform, but in this case, I'll go ahead and agree with you, Marvin. Perhaps they weren't even in the full getup, but still, well,
it's
go
possible.
ahead and read what actually happened.
Yeah, so according to multiple reports, Disney Springs security told the officers they could not enter unless the logos were covered or the shirts were turned inside out. One anonymous officer told News 6, "We were not allowed to enter wearing law enforcement-related clothing." Another officer expressed frustration that attendees from around the country simply wanted to enjoy their free time after the conference events. The situation then escalated quickly after conference organizers reportedly warned attendees to avoid wearing any law enforcement branded clothing if they planned to visit Disney Springs. That message spread rapidly among officers attending the event and eventually caught the attention of Florida Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins. Collins then personally went to Disney Springs to confront security management over the situation. According to reports, he secured assurances that officers would no longer be blocked from entering while wearing standard conference polos or department logos. The fact that the issue escalated to the office of Florida's Lieutenant Governor made the story significantly more damaging for Disney than a typical guest complaint, because Disney has already spent years navigating political tensions in Florida, specifically against Governor Ron DeSantis, and the optics of law enforcement officers being turned away from Disney Springs over police insignias created immediate backlash online. I mean, this was crazy. What makes it particularly notable, though, Vash, is Disney's response. Rather than doubling down or issuing some kind of vague corporate statement, Disney reportedly admitted security had been too conservative in applying the policy and acknowledged that officers should not have been denied entry. The company also apologized and stated it looked forward to welcoming the affected guests back in the future. Now, that's a direct admission that is relatively uncommon for Disney, especially in such a politically charged situation. Typically, Disney will opt for those carefully worded statements or avoid any kind of outright acknowledgement of wrongdoing. But in this case, the company moved quickly to claim the controversy before it spiraled any further. And despite the apology, several officers told local media they no longer had any interest in visiting Walt Disney World during their stay. That reaction highlights the broader issue Disney now faces. Even though the company corrected the situation quickly, the story fed into an already growing perception among some critics that Disney has become increasingly disconnected from large portions of the public, including law enforcement and conservative audiences. Vash, I mean, it's not a good look. And the fact that the lieutenant governor got involved, I think that's why Disney begged right off. Because the last time they tangled with DeSantis and the Florida state government, they lost, they lost Reedy Creek.
Yeah, last Reedy Creek, yeah. And I mean, juxtapose this with maybe that gubernatorial candidate that was actually the Starbucks in Disney Springs and how that whole thing went down right there. This was a very different response here. And look, it might very well have to do with the governor's office, no question about that. And obviously that's a very tangled history there. But I will say we are seeing more of these statements actually come out from the Walt Disney Company, which is surprising, not relating to I mean, or I should say, not restricted to events like this, but also to what actually happened in San Diego there with that raid that we actually saw, in which a couple of, employees or cast members on those ships were actually, arrested and so forth. We saw Disney actually come out on that and say, hey, look, listen, we don't actually necessarily agree with this behavior, working with law enforcement, etc. Something that they haven't previously done. So to actually get to the forefront on this, I think, Marvin, maybe this is kind of something new for the Josh Giamara era, right? Maybe Thomas Muslim and, everything on down, saying, hey, we're going to be a little bit more optics focused. And when we do make a mistake, we're going to acknowledge it and actually apologize. Something we would never have seen in the Bob Iger era.
Well, I think in the Bob Iger era, they purposely created those optics because he wanted to be seen as a major player in the Democratic Party and he wanted to run for president. Josh Giamaro, I think, just wants to run the Disney company. And so because of that, he's like, we have to fix our optics here. I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen in just a few days when June hits, whether or not Pride is going to take over Disney World again. Because the last couple of years, it's been very subdued. And it's almost like Disney is trying to find the center again. But I mean, kicking law enforcement officers out of, and those security personnel, you got to wonder, did they have a grudge against law enforcement? What exactly happened there? Because why would you, it's a guy wearing a polo that has an insignia on it. Why would you tell him he can't come in?
Yeah, I mean, and the citations of confusion, it's a little weird to have said that. I understand there are strict guidelines for law enforcement personnel and where they can actually be on property and so forth. We see that a lot at Disneyland, for example, right there. And there have been some conflicts related to that as well. But for something like this, I mean, to have handled it in this way was really eye-opening. It's like one step forward, two steps back, right? I think at Disneyland, they had a pretty good Memorial Day weekend showing of different events and so forth. They actually invited, I think, 100 members of the military from the Navy and Marines and so forth. And they had a flyover. And Thomas Muslim was there. Josh Giamara was there. It was actually a pretty big event. And it's like, okay, you know what? This is a very interesting position to take on this whole thing. Obviously, we saw Soarin' Across America, so it's kind of like, okay, we're heading in the right direction, and something like this happens. And it's like, honestly, how could you have ever let this happen?
Yeah, I agree. Well, guys, there was kind of a happy ending here. Disney did admit fault, but you know what? It may have been too little too late.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.